Hi everyone, welcome to Wednesday's Recovery Talks. My name's Claire Kennedy and I'm in my new house and we've just moved. So if you can hear things going off outside, it's my neighbours. I don't mean that going off like fighting. There's all sorts going on. There's trucks and all sorts, removal men. So anyway, welcome to our Wednesday talk. Yes, we use these chats, which are called recovery talks, as an opportunity to disseminate recovery information. So we, Kennedy Street, are a Brighton-based charity that offers support and signposting to anyone that's interested in recovery from addiction. And that includes those that are affected by addiction and the affected other. So we operate a helpline, which is a national helpline, and we connect people to these amazing resources that are often freely available. We've got a great group, a great recovery support group here today to do a talk with us. I'm really excited to hear more about this fellowship. It's so important. It's Alatine, and that the guest speakers are going to tell you more about how Alatine can help change people's lives and how it's helped change their lives as well. So I'm going to hand over to my lovely handsome husband, who's going to introduce himself, and then he will introduce the lovely ladies.
Hello everyone. It's we've moved house. It's a sunny day. We're near at the end of lockdown. What's not to like? And today, I hope you're all well. And today we have very special guests. We have Jenny and Louise from Alateen. Now, Alateen is an offshoot of Al-Anon, and they do say for every one addict, it affects maybe 15 or 16 other people. And normally those people that are most affected are close family and friends, especially children of addicts. So it's a very important area that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about, really, because there's no point in suffering in silence. If you are the friend or a relative of someone who's struggling with addiction, then this is perfect for you. So I'm not going to bang on. I'm going to introduce you, I think, to Jenny, and first off, who's going to tell us all about Alateen. Hello, Jenny.
Hi. So Alateen is a 12-step fellowship that is part of the Al-Anon fellowship, which is for friends and families of alcoholics or anyone who may think they have someone in their lives that's got a problem with alcohol. And sometimes members don't even know that there is a problem with alcohol, but they may relate to some of the things that they hear in Al-Anon or Alateen. And then that could be that they've got a grandparent or an auntie and an uncle that they don't know about. So if you do relate to what people are sharing in these fellowships, please keep coming, because you don't actually always know who it is that is qualifying you to come in. And we're here to support each other through our experience, strength and hope. So that's kind of a taster of what it is to be an Alateen or Al-Anon.
Amazing. So what we'll do is we'll go to Louise, who's also with Alateen, and she acts as an Alateen sponsor. And if you could tell us, Louise, how did you get involved with Alateen?
Yeah, sure. So Jenny and I are both Al-Anon members who are Alateen sponsors. So that means we are the responsible adult, as it were, who is legally required to be there. There are two screened sponsors, so we've gone through the checks required to be there. I started off, I'm now in Al-Anon. I started off in Alateen as an Alateen member when I was 12. So I had a bit of a rocky start. I went to about 6 meetings, and then it was just me and the sponsor one day, and I didn't like that because that meant I had to talk a lot. So I got a bit scared and stopped going for maybe a year, and then went back when I was about 13 and have been going to meetings ever since. I'm now 40. So I went to Alateen until I was 17 and then went up into Al-Anon and have been going ever since. So I'm kind of here in two capacities today, really, as an Alateen member myself and as an Al-Anon member who is an Alateen sponsor.
Amazing. I mean, it's fascinating how you've come to get involved. How about you, Jenny? How did you get involved with Alateen?
So I'm the child of an alcoholic. I grew up with an alcoholic father, and I've got alcoholic brothers. My family were in a lot of denial about the problem, and I think one day I met somebody from AA who spoke to me about 12-step recovery. And although I don't have a problem, thank God, with alcohol myself, I really related to what they were saying, and started to go into 12-step recovery. And a lot of the fellowships like AA and Al-Anon, they do conventions, and they invite lovely, gorgeous Alateen speakers to come along and share their experience. Most of the time I ended up crying when they'd share. And I realized that I really wanted that for my children, that they wouldn't grow up with that denial and thinking that was all their fault. So I dragged mine along to some Alateen meetings in the conventions. And of course, they were like, why are you dragging us here? You know, we don't want to be here. So I got involved in Alateen sort of via that sort of, you know, seeing it in action at conventions. And very, very slowly, one of my children started to want to go. And luckily, Alateen offers an open meeting about once a month. Alateen meetings will open up the doors and allow children even younger than 12 to come in, as long as they're accompanied by a known adult, someone that they know. And I was able to take my youngest son in there and go and attend meetings with him. So that was just brilliant. It was a real lifesaver for me and for him while we were all going through quite a difficult time.
Amazing.
Can I ask, in the difficult age that we live in, say someone gets in touch with you, a teenager or a child even, who has experienced problems with addiction from their parents because of the quite rightly the safety factors that are put in nowadays. How does that look? How would that conversation go, and what happens after that?
Well, someone who's interested in Alateen, whether it's a teenager themselves or a parent or a friend or anything, can get information from the Al-Anon General Service Office. Alateen is part of Al-Anon, so the General Service Office kind of looks after both fellowships. And they will get the email address of the Alateen coordinator for that area. So each geographical area has a coordinator who looks after the meetings. We are, of course, amazingly lucky right now that we have our meetings online, which has actually been amazing for Alateen members, because previously members had their one local meeting, if they were lucky, because there aren't that many around the country, that they could go to once a week or every other week. Nowadays there are about 4 or 5 meetings a week. They're around the country, but of course anybody can go to any meeting. So members would get sent details of their local coordinator, who would give them the information of how to join that meeting, but they'd also be told about all the other meetings they could go to as well if they wanted to.
So currently everything's online. Are there any face-to-face meetings at the minute?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. And what's your story, Louise? I'd love to know a little bit more about, I mean, obviously you've been going a long time. So do you mind telling us a little bit more about your story?
Yeah, of course. So my dad is an alcoholic. He was drinking quite actively long before I was born, and I think my mum expected that when I was born he might become a little bit more of a responsible adult and stop drinking, and of course that didn't happen. My mum found Al-Anon when I was very young, and they did get divorced, and around that time she introduced me Alatine. I say introduced. She told me that I was going to a meeting, and that was that. I went to the meeting, but I did find what was most amazing about that meeting. And the only thing I remember really was seeing someone from my school there. I was in middle school at the time, at 12 years old. And it just that moment of like, oh my God, there's someone that knows me. It was scary and weird, but it was also, it made all of this craziness that was going on like, oh, other people in the world, people that I know go through this as well. So it was also really grounding, and just to know that I wasn't alone. And, you know, at 12, I hadn't yet really got a grasp of what was going on. The first thing I really understood about my dad's drinking was when my mum, when they got divorced. It happened quite dramatically, with the police getting involved, and being introduced to Alateen. So at the moment, really, that I learned that my dad was a problem drinker, I also learned that he was ill, that he had a disease. It wasn't his choice. And I learned some amazing coping mechanisms for dealing with my dad, which basically allowed me to have a relationship with him. And it was a slow process, and my dad acted in a really unacceptable way for most of my childhood. You know, I was essentially the grown up, and he was the the kid at heart, and you know, certainly didn't show much responsibility. But over the years, I learned about compassion, having compassion for his illness. I learned about separating my dad from the disease, from the alcoholic. I learned about setting boundaries, saying no. And well, actually, I would say it probably wasn't until I was in Al-Anon really that I regained respect for my dad. That took many years, but that's also what Alateen and Al-Anon gave me. And today I have a really great relationship with my dad. I don't always like him. I find him a difficult person, but we genuinely share a laugh, and we see each other, and we speak regularly, and he has a wonderful relationship with his grandchildren. And I mean, that is a miracle, given, you know, the way things used to be.
Amazing. It is a miracle, isn't it? It's, you know, I mean, and well done. Congratulations, you, for putting that effort and energy in to set yourself free, really.
Yes.
You know, it's a powerful, powerful message that you carry there, Louise. And Jenny, how long have you been involved, and what was your story of engagement with was it Al-Anon that you started with, or was it straight into? So go on, tell us a bit more about your story.
Yeah, so it's slightly different from Louise's, because I didn't get the opportunity to go to Alateen as a child, and I seriously wish I'd had that opportunity. And if I'd, you know, heard about it, I might even have gone. Yeah, so the way I got into Al-Anon was I'd sort of spend it was generally Thursday night, but it got a bit more frequent than that after a while. It was generally Thursday night. I'd spend the whole evening in terror, waiting for my husband to come home. And I knew that I'd done it before, but I couldn't remember why or what was going on. It was just, I knew that I'd done that before. And actually, it was after a while that I realized that my husband was a functioning alcoholic, and that I had done that when my dad, when I was very little, I used to wait up on a Thursday or Friday night for my dad to come home, and I'd hide behind the curtains to wait for him to let him in, because he was very, very drunk. And I didn't want him to get into trouble with my mum. And so I'd like drag him in, put him to bed, and put a blanket over him, probably sleep by his side to check that he was okay, you know. And that was kind of a behavior that I learned as a very, very young child to do. And I took on enormous amounts of responsibility for the well-being of my family, to keep things on an even keel. And I really wish I'd had Alateen and just someone to reach out a hand and say to me, You know, you didn't cause it. You can't cure it. You can't control it. You may as well just put them all down, go outside and enjoy the day, you know, go and have a life. I wish someone had, you know, said that to me, but it's only in my 30s when I got into Al-Anon did I realize all of those things. And I've slowly started to get my life back again. And the reason why I've wanted to be an Alateen sponsor is because, you know, I want kids out there teens out there to realize that they don't have to do the things that I did. There is a way to set yourself free, as you said. And I want my children to be the generation where this disease kind of, you know, stops, where they have choices that I didn't have.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. What a beautiful opportunity to give young people that chance to break the cycle, really, to break that cycle of dysfunction and help them just fulfill their greatest potential in life, really, without that bondage of dysfunction and addiction. It's a really admirable. I love that you're both involved. What I'd like to know a little bit more about is, obviously, I know you said that the process is people would email in. So if there's any young people watching at the moment, which I'm sure there will be via YouTube when we replay this, how would that? Can you talk us through the very simple process of the steps that they would take, and then what would happen, if you don't mind? Either one of you can answer that, if that's all right. Louise, do you want to answer that?
Yes, happy to. So we've kind of mentioned how to get more information. Would you like any more details on that, or was that?
Yeah, just
okay.
Imagine that what I want you to do is, obviously, because we're online and because obviously young people like clear direction. So just put them through the process of what they would do to have to reach out. Is it confidential? Are they going to get in trouble? You know, what would happen then? Would you send their mum an email to say, oh gosh, you know? So just talk us through the process and around confidentiality and around then what would happen. The teenager, you know, you'd send them a Zoom link and then all this, that.
Lovely, yeah. I'll try and cover everything I can, and then Jenny obviously jump in afterwards with anything that I've missed. So yeah, two options. You can either give the office a call on the helpline number. It's a free number and it absolutely is confidential. The people on that helpline will give you the information you need about Alatine and how to get involved, how to join a meeting, basically. We obviously take safeguarding really seriously. At the moment, we've got lots of kind of extra security in place. So what you'd do is you'd be put in touch with the person that oversees meetings in your local area. And that person would tell you everything you need to know. So they'd give you the Zoom link and the password, and they'd send that out to you just before the meeting. They'd put your name down on the list so that when you turn up in the Zoom waiting list, they'd know that you're a bona fide young personality member, and they'd let you in. We're very careful about who we let in, so we ask members not to share the login with anyone else. We only allow people into the meeting that we are expecting to be there, so it can be a really safe place. So the other option other than the helpline is email. Again, definitely confidential. We can speak to parents or guardians of young people if they are ringing up for information, and then that parent or guardian can pass the information on to their child or whoever. And we can also speak to the young person directly if they want to do so, and we don't require permission from any kind of parent or guardian as long as that person is over 12. Sorry. Maybe I'll talk a little bit later about anyone that's under 12, but they are not considered an Alatine member, so we'll talk about 12 to 17 for this bit. And then Jenny, anything I've missed so far before we go on to talk about what the meeting's like?
No, that sounds great, Louise. That's exactly what I've been told.
I've got it right. So after that, then that young person if the day and the time suits them, they can join their local meeting, but they'll also be given the email address of all the other kind of regional coordinators. And if they would prefer to go to a Tuesday or a Saturday morning meeting, they'll be given that email address, and then they can get the Zoom login from that person instead or as well. And lots of our members do attend more than one meeting. The meeting that I sponsor at it's a London meeting. I live in London. That's where it used to take place. But we have members from Scotland and Ireland and Bournemouth and the Midlands. So like all of the corners of the country. And then at the meetings, we have an official meeting time, which is an hour and a quarter. We have about 15 minutes beforehand where everyone can join and chat informally, and then about, again, 15 minutes afterwards for more informal chats. So Alatine members can share their phone numbers if they would like to. They're not obliged to. We don't enforce that, and if they're not comfortable with that, that's fine. But we as sponsors don't get involved in the relationship between the Alatine members outside of the meeting. The meeting themselves, they're run very much like an Al-Anon or an AA meeting. There's a chairperson who reads from a script, basically, reading the opening, the closing, asking for volunteers to read the steps and the traditions. Usually the chairperson role is alternated, so somebody will volunteer to do it for the following week. We ask the members in advance if they'd like to suggest some topics to talk about. So every meeting varies, but for example, you might talk about a step and the daily reading and a topic one week, and another week might be a tradition or a slogan or another topic. And we just go round, and the chairperson asks people individually if they would like to share. And so we all share maybe 3 or 4 times during the meeting. And then we close the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. And then we have chat time.
Amazing, thank you. So just touching on, I know what the Serenity Prayer is, but just touching on what you've just said there, could you explain a little bit more about it? Is it a religious program, or is it a spiritual program? Could you just explain a little bit more around? So when people hear the word prayer, they straight away think it's some sort of religious order that they might be engaging in. Could you just explain a little bit more about that, please?
Shall I answer that one, Claire?
Please.
So Al-Anon and Alateen use the word God and the word prayer. And when I first heard that, I thought, right, this is definitely not for me. I'm out of here. But what I did realize was that what they were referring to is a spiritual experience, and we are not affiliated with any single religion at all. So anyone is welcome to come to Alateen or Al-Anon, and no one needs to be scared that anyone is going to try and change the way that what they believe or anything like that. We are completely free to come as we are with the beliefs that we have, and agnostics and atheists do fine in Al-Anon and Alateen. And even some of my children are agnostic. That's absolutely fine. That works for them. So there's no need to worry about that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Really, really helpful, because some people.
Do you go into schools and colleges? And that's the first question, and something that Jenny said about wanting to protect her dad. And do you find that people that is there anything to be scared of? Are you going to get the addict into trouble if they ring you? I think because that's going to be a major concern if someone's listening. I don't want to get my dad or my mum or my uncle or my brother into trouble. Is there a way that you allay those fears?
I think first of all, we are protected by the principle of anonymity. No one ever discloses. You do not have to talk about the alcoholic or your mum or your uncle or anything like that. you come for yourself and you talk about yourself. That's the main objective of Al-Anon and Alateen. It's the fact that not only it's a family disease, so the alcoholic is drinking, but the whole family has got infected as well. So you come for yourself, for the way alcoholism has affected you and infected your life. So no one is going to get into trouble because we are bound by very strong principles of anonymity. No one uses their second names. No one talks about what school they belong to. No one will ever mention their job or anything like that. And also at the end of the meeting, and we talk about the yellow card, is who you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here. And especially teens, don't be scared that you're going to get anybody into trouble. What we do suggest is that you make sure that when you're at a meeting, you've got your headphones in. If anyone can overhear you, you're in a safe place. Those are the things that we recommend. We'd recommend that to anybody anyway, sharing a 12-step group, just to make sure that what you're saying is completely anonymous and no one's going to repeat it or use it against you.
Okay.
Amazing. And I just to come in off the back of that, yeah, absolutely, anonymity is a core principle of Al-Anon and Alateen. So there's that, you're definitely not going to get your loved one in trouble. However, we should say that we are legally responsible, and part of our role as a sponsor is safeguarding. So if any issues of abuse, anything like that come up, we are legally required to pass that on. We would do so. We would talk to that young person about it and go through the appropriate channels. So we can't promise confidentiality in issues of abuse, but in all other areas, we absolutely can and do.
Absolutely.
Are you linked with other say someone rings Childline or something like that? Would they redirect them to you, or is that something that won't happen?
So if somebody rings Childline, obviously they may have our information and they will pass that teen over to us. But I just need to stress what Louise has said. If a teen has shared about some form of abuse that we obviously we can't collude in the secrecy that goes on around abuse of any children. That's not something that Alateen signs up to. And the sponsors, what they will do is help that teen to get information. And whilst keeping them as safe as we possibly can, we would never leave a teen alone to deal with something like that. We would then pass on that information especially over to charity groups like the NSPCC that can help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that, all good charities really have got safeguarding at the very core of everything that they do. And, especially where young people, vulnerable young people are involved. So thank you for reassuring us, both of you. And it's great that to know that all of your members who help with Alateen groups are all highly trained in that area and go through the process yearly as well, which I believe you have continuous professional development regarding safeguarding. So that's really reassuring. Thank you for that. So touching on sponsorship, so what we try and do at Kennedy Street is we try to demystify words. So whilst me and Kev know what a sponsor is, and a lot of the people listening might know what a sponsor is, if you could explain a little bit to us about the dynamic between an Alateen member and a sponsor. So how would that work? If you want to share that question, that's up to you. I don't know who wants to start first.
I'm happy to start on that one. So I would say, first of all, people who are in recovery programs themselves might know the word sponsor as a relationship you have with another individual, a one-to-one, someone who's a bit like a mentor that's been through the steps and is in recovery and can help you on your journey. We kind of do that, but actually what an Alateen sponsor means is a responsible adult who is present in the meeting, who is legally required to be there so that the Alateen meeting can take place. That's what we do. We're there physically or virtually, and we listen. we, the Alatine meetings are the meeting of the Alatine members. It's their meeting. We just need to be there. So, for example, we ask for suggestions for topics. We might, say, here's the suggested Al-Anon opening and closing. But if any member or, any group wants to suggest alternatives, that can be discussed. And we don't say yes or no to those. The groups or the members vote on it. There are traditions in place in Al-Anon and Alateen which are suggested. This is how we can run our meetings, and it works really well if we do this. But each group, Al-Anon or Alateen, can do it their way. So the same is true for Alateen, just as it is for Al-Anon. So as I said before, one of the Alateen members will be the chairperson. The Al-Anon sponsors will take it in turns to read the steps and read the daily reading, for example, just as a teenage member might do. But we're not there, I would say, as an authority. We don't have the answers. We are not the guide. We don't teach. We don't have the rule book. I would absolutely say that the recovery and the fellowship that Alateen members get in Alateen comes from sharing with other young people and hearing from other young people, knowing that other people are going through the same as them, identifying with it. At the end of the day, young people identify with other young people far more than adults. And we, well, certainly myself as a sponsor, I share, we take it in turns. I share on a topic and I share honestly, and I share my experience that I've got through Alateen and Al-Anon. And I hope that someone finds it useful and identifies, just like I do in an Al-Anon meeting. But we don't make any suggestions. We don't advise. We don't tell the Alateen members what to do. It is a self-help program. It's a fellowship where people come together and join with fellows who are going through the same thing. I think that's everything. Jenny, over to you to add anything on.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Louise has said, that ours is a very humble, low-key role. We're not stars of Al-Anon or experts in anything. We are definitely, I am definitely not an expert in knowing, giving advice and things like that. A lot of us are members of Al-Anon who are volunteering to support teens in their recovery journey. And we are there just to hold a space, a safe, loving, kind space for those teens to come in and share the issues that they have. And it might not even be about the alcoholic, it might just be about school or, whatever they're going through. It's not always serious, and there's a lot of laughter and a lot of fellowship between the teens, which is so heartwarming to see. Our role is just to sit there and be a guide. We're there to keep them safe. We're there to make sure the content is kept appropriate, and we're sticking to the topics, and we get a chance to share our experience, strength and hope with the teens, and we get a chance to hear their experience and their strength and their hope in that meeting. And I know I can speak for myself, that's been hugely beneficial to my own recovery, being part of an Alateen meeting.
Amazing. So it's very different. It's very, very different for those of you who know about sponsorship within 12-step fellowship. It's a very different role as in an Alateen sponsor. So I'm curious to know, so obviously you use literature and you use the 12-step program, which was created by Alcoholics Anonymous, and the 12-step process. So are you, as sponsors, as Alateen sponsors, do you take the young teenagers through the steps, or do they take one another through the steps? Louise.
It depends what they want. In my experience of when I've been sponsoring Alateen meetings, I've never taken an Alateen member through the steps. And when I was in Alateen myself, I didn't have a sponsor taking me through the steps either. you know, the Alateen program is based on exactly the same 12 steps and 12 traditions as Al-Anon. My experience of being in Alateen is that, you know, age 12 upwards, the steps were quite dense and complicated. And in Al-Anon, I've come to learn how simple they actually are, or can be, if I don't overcomplicate things. But, you know, as a teenager, I didn't really engage in the steps as I do as an adult in Al-Anon. That's probably not everybody's experience. That was my experience. I, you know, read them and absorbed them, and I definitely learnt from them, and I definitely did apply them in my life, but I perhaps didn't realize I was doing so. So we talked about them. We read them at every meeting, but I didn't have a one-to-one sponsor when I was in Alateen that I did step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3. I didn't do that until I was in Al-Anon. Now that's my experience. It's probably different for other people.
Okay, no, I thank you for that. Thank you for explaining that. It's really, because they aren't, like you explained, they aren't complicated. The steps are a very simple tool to apply to one's life. It's us as individuals that do complicate the process. So I suppose what's important are the principles that underlie the steps. So obviously the steps were built on principles. So it sounds to me like you're talking to the young people about the principles as well as the steps that the 12-step program was founded on. And what about you, Jenny? Have you got any other experience around the 12-step process, or is it the same as Louise's?
Yeah, so the meetings that we held, we'd choose a topic of a step. And what's great in Alateen is the literature is not the same as in Al-Anon. It's actually specifically written for teens. So they have their own little daily reader, a little red daily reader, with stories that they've written for every single day of the year, and they'll refer to that in meetings. So they're reading literature written by teens for teens. And there is a 12-step book, and there's a little workbook and things like that. And all of it is completely adapted towards teenagers and making it much more lighthearted, much more fun. It's got drawings, it's got cartoons, it's got, you know, little quotes from people. It's far more accessible. And yeah, the great thing is that meetings can be run like that. You know, there are some teens that come in who can't talk, you know, they're just not able to get to say what's going on for them. And sometimes, you know, if we're talking about step 1, and some teens are able to express, they have the verbal ability to express their powerlessness, some of them don't, and I would give them a piece of paper and say, draw your powerlessness. And sometimes that will work, and especially with the younger members, that really works for them. You know, they're just not able to verbalize it yet. And, you know, teens' brains are different. they all grow at different different age groups and things like that. So we try and make it more user friendly.
That's brilliant. That's really interesting and really a great idea, because, you know, you do have to adapt and fit the clientele group that, and young people, like you say, are so very different. So we have a question from Jim, who's watching, and he's very interested to know how you would nurture a teen to visit an Alateen meeting. So how would you what's your experience, really, I suppose, of encouraging a teenager to engage in an Alateen meeting? Okay,
so if it's okay with Louise, I'll answer that, because I've actually had to do that. As I said, you know, what worked for me, this is my personal story. There is no hard and fixed way to do this. I tried dragging my 2 to meetings and they refused to go, so that didn't work for them. But what did work was going to these amazing AA Al-Anon conventions where teens are there. There are Alateen sponsors who set up meetings in different rooms for the teens to go to. Obviously, these are very safe and secure. They're only attended by teens. And one of my children kind of came along, saw the teens going for Alateen sponsored swims, just all of them laughing and, messing about. And he began to realize that there was nothing scary about it. One of my children said, "Oh, it's a cult." Then they realized there was nothing, there was nothing like that involved. Just a bunch of teens larking about, supporting each other. So I did it in a sort of, through the back door kind of way, because dragging them to a meeting didn't work. But maybe some teens would be open to that. Maybe the older ones, you could sit them down, talk to them about the family disease of alcoholism, how it affects every single member of the family, no one escapes, and then offer them the opportunity to go to 6 meetings, give it a go. And then we would suggest 6 meetings before you make up your mind if it's for you or not, because believe me, your first meeting is not going to be, it's not, it's going to be difficult. So go to 6 meetings and then make up your mind. Louise, just wondering if you've got any more ideas on that.
That was great to hear your experience. Thanks, Jenny. The only thing I would say is, as well as the conventions, often, and I think it's a bit different now, we're online, but Al-Anon or AA meetings might have shared platforms. So that will be a meeting where there's an Al-Anon, AA and an Alatine speaker sharing at the start of the meeting. So I often recommend to parents, perhaps that's a great way in, because whereas in an Alatine meeting, if the teenager's really nervous about that, if it's a small group, they might feel that they have to speak. A larger group, an existing meeting, they can just sit and listen. They don't have to feel worried about speaking. And we never, ever force people to speak. And quite often in Alateen meetings, someone says, "I'll pass, please." And it just goes on to the next person. And that's absolutely fine. And we make that very clear. But it can sometimes be a nice way in for young people to know that they're not going to be made to say anything, and they can just sit and listen.
Amazing. Thank you. Have you got any questions, Kev?
Just to go back, did you say you do go into schools and colleges, and is that a profitable way of getting people to engage with you?
We do. We're a charity, so all members are trying to get involved in public information, letting people know that Alateen is there, just like we're doing today. So it's something that members do themselves. And so we encourage members of Al-Anon and Alateen to go into doctor surgeries, schools, youth centres, libraries, put up posters, speak to the staff. People do go and do talks or attend kind of, open days on mental health or whatever. There is somebody at the head office who does work on public information, but it is pretty member-led, really, and we all just kind of get involved and do what we can. So we absolutely do that kind of thing about going into schools. Usually it's if a member is somehow, wants to approach their local school and do that, it's quite low key. We kind of just do what we can to let people know that we're there if they want it and if they need it.
And of course, it's all free, is it? Then?
Yes. Yeah, we have, we work on voluntary contributions to cover rent, tea and coffee, supplying literature for newcomers, and to obviously the cost that it could cost to run our head office. But it's just contributions. So yeah, it's absolutely free and there's no minimum donation or anything.
Okay. Well, I've really nothing to add except that I'm really pleased that you've come on today. And I think what you do is sterling work and very much needed. Because especially within the pandemic and especially at Kennedy Street, we have everything has just really reached a head with addiction. People being locked up with maybe locked up with an addict, and I think certainly we have seen an increase in it. So all I want to say is thank you very much for your work, and just thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that it's been amazing speaking to you both. I could actually sit and talk about this subject all day, because I really do feel personally that young people are underserved when it comes to the support that is available to them. And I think really more public information. I'm sure you guys have got enough to do, but I think more, I mean, this is why I really wanted to use our platform to disseminate the message, because it's so important that young people know that there is help available, and that it's free, and that it's a safe place to go, and it's all right to start to have that conversation with people who are just going to support them. And there's nothing, you know, there's no cult involved, there's no massive amounts of money involved, you know, it's all freely available, and that you're going to help them to just to find the best self, really. So I think it's absolutely wonderful, the work that you're doing. If we can help spread the good news that Alateen exists, we will shout it from the rooftops as well. But what I wanted to say before we finished up was really around, how have you found Alateen to be impacted by COVID? Like Kev just said, we as a charity, we never used to operate a helpline before lockdown. So what COVID has done for us as a charity has created a national helpline, where at some points we were getting over 100 phone calls a week. So I can only imagine, Alateen, the rate of interest has gone up. But could you tell us a little bit more about how Alateen has been impacted by COVID?
Well, as you said, you know, Kevin, there are more people who are locked in a house with perhaps a drinking mum or dad or brother or sister, you know, or granny even, who knows, or granddad. And there are many alcoholics, sadly, and unfortunately that will definitely impact whole families. And I'm speaking from personal experience, having 7 in our family, all 7 of children were affected one way or another by my father's drinking, which was high functional drink alcoholism. So you don't have to be lying in a gutter to be an alcoholic and to have a family that's impacted by your drinking. So you know, there is nothing worse, and I speak again from personal experience, to be alone with the burden of, you know, in a family. And I cannot imagine what some teens are going through right now, being locked down and locked in with that problem. So how it's affected us is actually, it's been a very positive thing. One benefit that's come out of being in a COVID situation is that our general service office very kindly, with the help and the very quick response from some of our sponsors, have started Alateen online. And we didn't have that facility before, and it's been brilliant. We've got a lot more teens coming in. There's a huge amount of support and fellowship out there. So all I can say, don't suffer alone in your house, locked down with someone who you can't control their drinking. It's not your fault. You know, come and get some help, and contact the helpline or contact the email, and someone will get back to you.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful work, ladies. And I can't reiterate enough what Jenny and Louise have said. You know, don't be alone with this illness. Reach out. You can access these meetings via a phone. So, you know, even if you made that phone call and went for a walk, and you could access the Zoom meetings by telephone, so you could go for a little walk and you could go to a meeting at the same time. So amazing work, ladies. Thank you so much.
If we got time for a final comment, Claire and
Yes, please do.
I was just going to say, I was just thinking about how, I mean, you know, I think I've talked a bit about my experience in Alateen and how helpful it was, but just to reflect as an adult, especially in Al-Anon, I see so many young adults or middle-aged adults or older adults coming in who have been affected by somebody else's drinking. Perhaps are no longer living with it, didn't think Al-Anon was for them for any reason. But the longer I spend in Al-Anon, the more I realise how amazing Alateen was for me. It cannot be underestimated, the impact of knowing kind of what's going on and coming to understand these things. And as Jenny said at the start, she would spend her evenings hiding behind the curtains to let her dad in and looking after him, when she could have just been enjoying her life as a child. we don't know that as a child. And it takes many people until they're middle-aged to realize that. I learnt that. I started to learn that when I was 12. And my early 20s were a very difficult time. But by that point, I had the grounding of Alateen and then Al-Anon. I'd learnt so much that I skipped ahead of all of that rubbish. I said, no, I'm going to live my life. And, you know, that doesn't just mean cutting my dad out of my life. It means looking after myself first. And as a result, having a great relationship with my dad. And as a result, being kind of emotionally and spiritually mature and making great decisions. What Alateen taught me was invaluable. And I realize what a great thing it is for anybody to learn these things at a young age. Whether or not they've been affected by someone's drinking, but especially if they have. So, you know, I would also say, if you're not living with alcoholism now, you know, I definitely was affected by it even when I wasn't around it. So yeah, that's the end of my massive plug.
It's amazing. No, thank you for that comment. And Jenny, have you got any final comments? I mean, like I said, we could go on all day with this conversation. I really would love for you to come back as well. And, you know, if there's anything that you want to come back and talk about, please just let us know. Is there anything, Jenny, that you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Claire, so much, and Kevin, for inviting us to, you know, to talk about Alateen. If we just reach one teenager today and give them that opportunity of having a life that is free from worrying and, you know, that sickening feeling that they're in this alone, then, you know, that's enough for me, really. That's good enough for me. If there's just one teen that gets the message today, then that's one teen that is not going to be spending their lives worrying about someone else's drinking. And, you know, alcoholism is a terrible illness, and there's nothing we can do to help the drinker until they're ready to help themselves. So, you know, if you don't even go to Alateen, just listening today, if there's one thing you go away with, it's, you know, give yourself to go out there, have your own life, enjoy yourself, make friends, go traveling as soon as you can, and it's safe to go traveling, and just, you know, let go of things that you've got no control over.
Yeah, powerful message. And I love that message that you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. I think, you know, that's really important for families to understand, not just teenagers. But thank you, ladies. We really appreciate you coming on. We'd love for you to come back and, you know, just fill us in with more information of the wonderful work that you're doing. And like I say, if there's anything that we can do to help people understand and connect them to you guys, feel free to give us a call. There's lots of comments from lots of different people. I'll respond to the comments when we get offline. And yeah, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate. Give Al-Anon a ring if you want to talk to us about where to start. There's one comment off an adult called Greg, who came on the show the other week. I'm curious to know, he's wondering how strongly impacted he might be by the alcoholism of his father. So he's an adult of a alcoholic, and I'd just, you know, just suggest that you explore Al-Anon. And there is also another amazing fellowship called Adult is it Adult Children of Alcoholics?
ACA.
Yeah, ACA, so Adult Children of Alcoholics, which is another amazing fellowship. So we are very blessed to have lots of great work going on around us. So keep up the great work, ladies. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll see everybody next Wednesday, hopefully. Lots of love to you all. Stay safe. Thank you, Alateen. You're doing amazing work. Keep spreading some hope. Lots of love, everyone. Bye-bye.